I guess everybody can sit down. I keep trying to tell the choir that I'm a stiff. And they unstiff me somehow. All right, hey, you know, you're a combination of a social butterfly type person and also a loner. It just goes with the territory. It's how we're created. You spend time with people at work and play, just meeting for a cup of coffee, and other times you enjoy being alone, minding your own business, having the privacy that we all fight for. And in all of those different kinds of configurations of our lives, the one thing that comes through in the lessons today is that we have been created for companionship, for community living. And in the fact of being created to participate as companions in life, that is one of the gifts that God gives to all of this. Now, you all know what it is to be a companion. You've all eaten at Panera Bread, I take it. Cum with panis, bread. They took it Panera, is an additional derivative from the Latin word. So you all know that companionship, and most of the time you do that in terms of breaking a bread or having a cup of coffee or a soda or something like that. So the creation story really begins off by talking about that it is not good for a man to be alone. And the play on words that goes there is that Adam, that's the Hebrew word that means human, and Adam is formed out of Adama, the soil. So one of the relationships that you have in life is with the soil that you walk on. Those of you who have tried and continue to try desperately to create a lawn in the Poconos know fully aware of the relationship you have with the soil. It is both tedious, tendentious, and occasionally irritating as you keep digging Pocono potatoes out. And you can't cook them, just move them to make a wall. But you know what it is to have a relationship with the soil. And also, as you're walking around, I was talking to somebody recently who was weeding in her garden and picked up a snake. Oh, don't anybody pass out. I found it really amusing. Well, that would be me, yeah, can I tell you. But, you know, we have a relationship with the earth. And that's part of the whole part of the creation story that we have this morning, is that our relationship, our companionship is with the soil, with the animals that surround us of all kinds. Now, the other part of it, of course, is that we are created for relationship with people. And the Hebrew play on words with that is also instructed. God makes a woman. Isha is the Hebrew word out of man. Ish, I-S-H, and Isha, to talk about the closeness, the intimacy that is part of what it means to have a relationship with another human being. And the intent in all of this section is to try to describe the fact that we are companions, traveling companions through life. And that part of what it means to be a companion who travels together in life with another person and also with the earth is that you bring certain qualities with you into that particular relationship. For Adam and Eve and for God in the Garden of Eden, it's a perfect description of paradise, no? That's what it's called, paradise. And paradise gets lost whenever relationships and companionship is broken up. And the breaking up of companionship is so well known by all of us. We've all had broken relationships. And we know how devastating it is, because it is only in the brokenness a lot of times that we recognize our dependence on the other. And it is the absence of that dependence, reliable dependence on the other, that brings home the fact of how critically important the reliability of a dependent partner is in our lives. The Bible calls forth some key ideas in the dependency of our relationships with companions. Beauty, for one thing, trust, love, and justice. Those 4 things. I don't know what you consider beautiful. My wife brought home some clothes that she had picked up for our daughters, and they were beautiful. They were gorgeous. We went out later, went to Kramer's, and they had a sale on weed whackers. I'm looking at that bad boy and I'm saying, now there's Roger, right? Now weed whacker beauty. Yes. We have different understandings of what beauty is, but you see the companionship nature of our lives together brings a whole host of ideas of beauty together, and we begin to look through the other companion's eyes and see it. And that really matters. It enriches our lives, in other words. Also, the fact of having somebody who's trustworthy. Do you know how important trust is? You know how important love is. You know, the Bible has 4 different words for love. In English, we only got 1. But one of the words for love is affection. And just being affectionately disposed to the earth that you live with and to the people that are around you. I stopped in at Wawa, which is one of my haunts, quick stops, and I was so irritated because there were some kids hanging outside, and instead of throwing their cups and garbage in the garbage can, they threw it on the ground, on the concrete. Well, that just irritated me because I'm thinking if you have a relationship with the soil, you want to take care of it. No? Yes, you do. So I went right over to them and said, why would you trash the front of the store and make it look ugly when you got a garbage can right there? Well, they looked at me like I had 2 heads, and I wasn't sure that they were not sure that they weren't going to pop me in the head. But that's okay. You know, so then I just went in. Since they did not respond, they just stared. But when I came out, they picked up the garbage and thrown it in the garbage can. Because I see absolutely no reason, based on the Genesis story in the Bible, of our relatedness to the earth, where you have any right to destroy it and to trash it. Period. We do enough of that with our coal mining and fracking and everything else that you can imagine. Nuclear testing. Talk about destroying and breaking up our relationship with the soil, with the earth. So companionship and relatedness, as the Bible describes it, as Jesus was talking about it, really involves truth, love, justice, and beauty. And that becomes then a spiritual identity which we have, and which we gather and is strengthened and renewed in our relationships with other people. Our culture, as you well know, we like to be independent and independently capable, right? I mean, you hear the American mythology, which we've all grown up with, right? We created ourselves. We changed our own diapers. We made our own baby food. We taught ourselves. We're all self-made men and women. And we didn't have any help from anybody in getting mentoring for jobs. We didn't have any teachers. We did it all by ourselves. It's the American myth. And you know it as a myth as well as I do. I just said it as a caricature, and I know that. But you get the essential idea that there's a point at which the Bible describes independence and dependence as needed at both ends, and with the interplay that goes with that. Now, unfortunately, a lot of our relationships are not based on the health of companionship and on the health of how Jesus is describing relationships. Today's gospel focuses on women and children. One of the things you need to know is that the marriage definition was very different in the ancient world than it is today. All right, entirely different. And has any women here burned dinner recently? And nobody's going to admit to it. I know. did in the ancient world, if you burnt dinner, that was grounds for divorce. No, I'm serious. I'm entirely serious. Yeah, anything that a woman did, you understand the relationship. This is why Jesus is coming down so hard on the two becoming one flesh, because it was not that way. It was simply a functional job, a functional occupation that you could easily, as a woman, be discarded if you did not fulfill the functions that were required in the way that the man required it. And so Jesus was really being very hard-nosed and got the Pharisees and the religious leaders very upset because he's saying, no. Relationship between a man and a woman is based on companionship, and it is based on beauty, truth, love, and justice. Justice having to do, of course, with fair play, to keep it simple. And to have a husband and a wife love each other means also that they respect and care for each other. Sin is another working description of paradise lost, right? Milton's poem, Paradise Lost. But whatever causes the cracks and the seams in our relationships, Jesus was teaching his disciples that the only way in which things are going to change, where companionship and trust and beauty and love and justice matter, is starting with the kids. This is the third week in a row now where Jesus has been teaching about kids. The reason being is that we adults, having been sinful and unclean, we know what broken relationships are. We have broken them, we have renewed them, we have fractured them, we have rebuilt our lives in new ways around trust and companionship in healthier ways, that it is on us, Christians, adults, to bring up the children so that they know from the get-go what makes a healthy relationship. And that's why Jesus told the disciples, don't chase any kids away. Bring them here to me. Bring them here to me. I want to know them. And that is the promise that he makes not only to the kids then and the disciples then, but also to you and I now. You have a relationship with Jesus which he has set up, and the way he has set it up is by means of baptism, for one thing. How do you know you're well loved? Jesus said simply, you're going to be baptized. That's how one way you're going to know you're loved. The second way is that you're going to receive the Lord's Supper. We call it the Lord's Supper because it's the Lord's Supper, and we, all of us, including me, are invited guests. Nobody's better than anybody else. We're all invited guests. That's part of our relationship, our companionship with the Lord. The other thing that he did was to spend a lot of time in prayer, in meditation, and contemplation. Encouraged the disciples to do that too, so that you could not only get in touch with the Lord through prayer, but you would also have time to think about the relationship you have with the earth on which you walk, and how you're going to handle that and to enrich it and pass it on to future generations, but that you would also have time then to evaluate and think through the meaning of the relationships that you have, whether they are healthy and well-formed, or whether they are scarred and distorted in some fashion, whether in fact you have a relationship of dependence, which can be a very healthy thing and is described here very healthily. To be dependent on somebody means that you can count on them, reliably count on them. And that's important for all of us, to have people in our corner that we can count on. And that's the good news that Jesus has created for us through his Father and in his ministry with us through the bread and the wine and the waters of baptism, all of the ways in which we are dependent on him and he is trustworthy in our dependence on him. And as disciples, we're simply called to be as trustworthy in our relationships as he is with us. God exists in and with dependence, always. The expectations that we have about God and what Jesus had in relation to his Father was very simply in those four areas again. It's the companionship with its attendant gifts of seeing the beauty that surrounds you. That should be one of the areas that whatever companionship you have with whomever it is should be front and center. They should be able to say to you, this is beauty. And you should be able to be saying to them, this is beauty. So that your life is enriched and broadened and expanded. You should be able to talk about the nature of love, both not only as self-giving, giving to the point of your own exhaustion, but also to the point of receiving. Because that's what friendship love is. Where you also are receiving love from others and accepting it willingly. And finally, the idea of affection as a form of love, where you're affectionately disposed. Martin Luther always said, when you have an opportunity, think the best of people first. Even if your tendency, and our tendencies today are toward the negative. You know, if you watch less TV, I guarantee you, you're not going to be as negative. But to be affectionately disposed toward the world that God created and that you live on this planet. And finally, the area of justice. Caring for real needs with no expectation of reward. Those are all parts and forms and shapes of what it means to be a companion, to be part of the earth, to be Ish and Isha. That's the gifts that we've been given. That describes faith, and every time that you act on companionship in a healthy and a good way, every time you recognize it and are able to accept it as a good thing, that is how your faith is enriched, and that's how you know you have faith. It's when you back off from the world, and you back off from people, and you think everybody's a scumbag. And if you're a liberal or a Democrat, you've got to be bad and unhealthy and unwholesome. If you work in a certain occupation, that's no good. It's an evil one. If you do certain things, that's not bad. You know all the judgmentalism that we have around and about in the country. Okay, all of that stuff gets drowned in baptism, and then it gets cleansed with the bread and wine and forgiven, so that you're then free to be the kind of companion that God created you to be. Amen.